No. So we are on track for this fall. As you will see, the theme is pretty much fully developed. So what you're seeing is the basis of everything that you will get. Plus, we'll be adding a lot more features as we go on. But yeah, we're on track for launching this fall. So we're very excited. And I think that's all that I need to say. I really do want to hand it over to Troy so that he can jump into the demo. But if you have any questions, just as Troy is presenting, we won't be able to see hands up necessarily. So I ask that everybody please use the chat, or you can also save your questions for the end and we will address all of the questions that you have. But yeah, use the chat and we will all be monitoring and answer questions as we can. So yeah, without further ado, Troy, I'll pass it over to you.
Great, thanks MK, and thank you for joining us, everyone. Let's just dive right in. So here is the front page for the new CU theme. This is the home page in our development environment. What I'm going to do here first is I'm going to walk through several examples of various blocks and some content that we've developed that we're using for testing purposes. Then I'm going to hop into the back end a little bit. We're going to build some blocks. We're going to look at some of the options. We're going to see some of the features you can expect from the new and improved administration area within WordPress. And then if time permits, I got a couple of little things I would like to touch on. Otherwise, I'd like to also leave a good amount of time towards the end for questions. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through these 4 different groupings here. So core blocks. Core blocks are essentially content blocks that are provided by WordPress in core. There are a good amount of blocks in there. Some of them are quite useful for our environment. Some of them provide a lot of, out of the box, weird little ideas that don't really suit sort of the stuff we do. So we've gone through and we've curated them. We've modified a few of them. So if I were to scroll down the page here, you'll see a lot of the things that you've come to expect, like various levels of headings, your lists, ordered lists, quotes, column blocks. We have some button blocks in here. One thing you guys will like, and I know this has been something that's requested, we can have a series of buttons on the same line. We have our typical tables here. Keep going down the page. We have tables that also have captions. We have some images. We have a nice widescreen image here. I'll show you guys the built-in cropping tools that comes with the new Gutenberg setup a bit later. Images with captions, some alignment with captions. So these are sort of the core blocks that you guys have come to be familiar with I think every iteration of WordPress and Carleton Framework and Carleton CMS stuff that we've done here in the past. We're going to work with them quite differently. So let's just jump over to card grids. So as of right now, we do have 5 different card grids. There's only 4 listed. Videos is missing from here. One of our developers, Adam, had reconfigured how the video post type works, and we just haven't had a chance to build out the content examples just yet, but that will be coming very soon. So we're going to touch on all 4 of these items. First, we'll start with news cards. I think that's probably one of the most used ones. Everybody seems to write news posts and start to get information out there. So as we come down the page, when you first put a news block on the page, you'll start to see you get some images, you get your date, title, and excerpts. What you'll see with these short excerpts is that we have the ability to write your own custom excerpt, and that will show up on the front page. If you don't have the means to write one, or you just forgot to do one, not a big deal. We'll still grab the first chunk of content from your post and we'll use that as your excerpt instead. So if you scroll down, you can see other options would be without an excerpt. You'll see options without an image, without an excerpt. You'll see some options where you're just using date, post, and excerpt. Coming down here, if you just wanted to go image and title alone, you do have that flexibility to do that as well. And then you can filter by categories as you would with any other news listing. So what you'll see here is there's a good variety of ways you can present your news to your visitors. We also have this new 4-column option that breaks outside of our max width of 1024. So we're now allowing some of our content blocks to go to 1080. So this works a lot nicer for a good 4-column layout. And again, you'll see all the same options here with images. Some have dates, some don't have excerpts. We really wanted to make sure we had a good variety of ways people could start to display their content. And then again, we come down to the 2 columns, and all of the same options are here as well. We'll take a quick look at how these options will work really shortly. So I'm going to jump over to people cards. So now on people cards, kind of get the same concept here. You get your 3 column, you get an image, you get the person's name, email, phone number, job title. Scrolling down through the page, we do have options where you can remove the email, you can remove the phone number, we can remove the job title. Really, we've tried to create a lot of flexibility here so you guys can actually have more control over how your content is displayed. So if you want to be really clean with it and just have an image and a person's name, totally possible here. Much like the news listings, you can break everything out into a nice 4-column grid here. This will be a consistent thing with all of our card blocks. We will have the ability to do 2, 3, and 4 columns. We scroll down the page here and you continue to see the variety of ways you can build your people posts. I know this question is eventually going to come up. Yes, we are planning on building a setup where you can control the order of them. It will not be done in this current block, but it is one of our most requested features. So it is something that is on our radar, and we will be looking at building a setup where you could build your own org chart style listing, or just to be able to customize them with the way that your department would prefer to have them, as opposed to based on last name or first name alphabetically or something like that. Okay, so going over to the event cards, this one here is probably the biggest design change that we've done on cards. So what you see here now is we have this nice little highlight on a date box, and you get your title, and there's some variety here on how the locations are going to work. You can see that most of these are on campus, or if you have a hybrid event, you can have a virtual event. And those are all different options that you can pick in the admin area as well. And again, you'll see the 4-column layout here, and we see another nice 2-column layout. Again, trying to provide flexibility. The event is the one that is actually a little bit more restrictive on things you can hide or show here, because all of this information is actually really important. So you don't have the ability to remove a date or a time or a location. It's just something that's just too important for what the visitor needs. Now we have our stack cards. This is a bit of a departure from what we've done in the past. I believe in the past, we more had items that you would select from like pre-built or predetermined stats or groupings of them. I think that was a framework feature, if I remember correctly. What we've done in this iteration, though, is we've given you the full control over how you would like to build these out. So they don't technically need to be stats per se, as long as they have like a lead in and some sort of a piece of information. We can definitely you can have some flexibility on how you want to build these guys. We'll take a look at some of the options. You can flip some of the ordering around. Again, you have your 3-column, your 2-column, your 4-column layouts. So here's the reverse. So you get your stat up at the top, and then you get your description sort of at the bottom. And then we have our stack listings. So again, stack listings is something that we did, I believe, in Framework. I think all CMS users were kind of limited to how they display their content with cards. What we did this time is we kind of redesigned how stacked listings would work to give a little bit more flexibility here and take a really great feature from Framework and bring it to cuTheme. So first we have our news cards. So you drop in your defaults, and much like the cards, they all have the same options. So you can choose to show an image, show your dates, or your excerpts, and you do have a lot of flexibility here. And you can also pick between 1-column and 2-column layouts. So I'll scroll down the page here. You can see there's some stuff where you don't have an excerpt. Here we don't have an image or no excerpt. This is actually one of my favorite views for news, especially for those that don't really have access to good images or something of that nature. This is actually a really nice layout in my opinion. We can come down, we have an image and a title, and then here's some of the 1-column. So this is probably more familiar to those folks that use Framework in the past. This is very similar to what we've offered with the Framework listings over the past few years. And again, you scroll down the page, you can see all the flexibility in what you can show and what you're going to hide. However you want to do it, really. Variety is the spice of life, they say. So again, you get the same idea with the people listing here. You get your block defaults with your nice image. You know, our favorite person in the world right here, Mr. Carlton Banks. You kind of scroll down, you know, some of the ladies from the Golden Girls. Everybody loves the Golden Girls. Yeah, so again, it's all about, you know, the flexibility to be able to list some of the stuff the way you would like to. And then the same thing goes with the event listings. We've got the 2-column layouts, and then we have the single column layout, but being a little restrictive without the ability to hide the dates or hide the location. So let's move over to some of our custom blocks now. So we have the column block. That should be fairly straightforward. We do have a 2-column layout. For those that are going to ask about 3-column, we did have a discussion around this one, and we decided to not offer a 3-column. One of the main reasons there was, as you start to look at a 3-column layout responsively, your breakpoint has to be done at such a high level that it almost really serves no purpose to have a 3-column layout. Things get really tight, they're really small, they're hard to read. So we made a decision to not do a 3-column layout for cuTheme. But within our 2-column, we can start putting images, you can put headers in there. So you can really build out column layouts with a lot of good content. And the final custom block we have is our description list. Those of you might recall, or this is sort of similar to what we used to call the FAQs or the slide me's. By nature, those are called definition lists in code. And what that does is it's code that denotes something that has a term and a description for that term. So we tried to take that concept and really just blow it out a little bit more to give a little bit more flexibility on how people can display this information. So the most commonly used one is something that features a term and then a short description of that. In this case, you can have multiple paragraphs. You can do lists in here if you would like to. We also have this option. So if you have something that's a little bit shorter in content, we can have a setup where you have a side-by-side view with your term and your definitions in a 2-column layout. And we do have planned an accordion style slide me-esque feature. We just had a little bit of a technical difficulty, so we put that on hold for now, but we do expect to have that in cuTheme very soon as well. So that is the content examples that we currently have in cuTheme. You can pause now and take a couple of questions if anybody would have any specific questions about the content before we dive in and start building some content.
Oh, hi, Troy. There was a question about images for the events and whether or not the images are required. And I don't know if we've actually gone over that, but in the past, we've provided fallback images if there's none. I don't know if we have that currently. So I just wanted to clarify that with you.
Right now, there is a single fallback image, but the idea would be to look at what we could do as far as integrating with other solutions that we have at this university. I know like DUC, for example, has an image bank of stuff that we would love to be able to work with. They have an API. I think for now, that would be something what we do in a V2. So we want to get this thing to production, and then we're going to start looking at how we can improve the images and be able to provide people with more flexibility on working with images, especially because we do have situations where a lot of folks just don't have access to good images, or they don't have the tools that help them crop it and stuff like that. So it would be really great if we can have some sort of an integrated system with the tools that DUC has available to them as well. All right, so let's just move on and let's start building out some content here. So I'm going to work with the homepage here a little bit, and we're just going to touch on some of the new look of the admin area for WordPress. So as you can see right now, for everybody here that's used to CMS or used to Framework, you can see that this is a drastic departure from what you guys have come to know over the last, say, 10 years or so from all the work that we've done here with WordPress. The best thing about this is how closely we can actually get the admin area to look to the front end. So while we do have a preview mode, I can tell you now I've built hundreds of pages of content so far, and I have not once used the preview mode. For users of the current CU theme, the preview mode does work now. So that'll be a nice change for the folks that are working with the current CU theme from the pilot we did. One of the things I do want to point out here is we have some nice SEO tools over here at the sidebar, so people can work on their SEO in a very different way. We can start to look at some of these tools. I'm not going to dive into them now, but I just wanted to point out the change of where the SEO tools do exist in WordPress now. We also have a lot of ways you can actually focus on your content. So as you saw here, if I close up this button, it gets rid of my sidebar, so I can focus only on my content area. You can also come into here and you can turn on distraction-free writing, which gets rid of all of the stuff around you. Then you can bring it back by coming back up here. You can go into, I'll turn off the distraction-free. You can go into a spotlight mode, so you can focus on just the block that you're editing. So if you've got something that, you know, just requires a little bit more focus, like say you're working on the banner by itself and you don't want to see the content, you can do that without any extra distractions. And there will be a few other things here as we go. So if I turn off the spotlight, and then the full screen mode will bring back this navigation. So if you want quick access to, you know, create events, create people, create videos, or whatever the case might be, you can turn off the full screen mode. I much prefer the full screen mode. I like really focusing on my content, and I'm sure a lot of content writers will appreciate some of those new, really clean tools to help you focus on what you're writing. As far as blocks go, there's a couple different ways we can add blocks into a page. The easiest way would be to open this little sidebar up, and then you can scroll through all of the blocks that we currently have available for use on CU theme. These blocks are available to be used on pages, posts, events, people, and new and videos. Yes, I think that's the other post type we currently have. All of these content blocks will be available for you on any of the content that you want. So there really are no restrictions on being able to do some great promotional stuff on an event, or, you know, really focusing on like your people profiles. Like I know research would really take advantage of a lot of that stuff as far as like promoting the research that happens here at Carleton. So a lot of these blocks are going to be just used all over the place. So then I'm going to add a couple of blocks here just to show you how some of these options work. So I think paragraph, pretty self-explanatory, and headings, the same thing. Lists, quotes, and tables, these are all things that I think everybody has worked with quite a bit. I do want to take a look at images though. I find one of the things that we've always struggled with in the past was how folks work with their images, and especially the cropping of images. So if I come in here now and I want to throw in this little campfire image, that's great. It's kind of big. Maybe I want to crop the top off a little bit. So you can do a little crop here. There's a couple ways to crop. So if this image were, say, oversized, if I want to oversize the image and I want to kind of crop it in, you can do it this way. What I prefer, though, is if I go in and let me just crop this image down. And if I want to go and edit this image over here, you get this little edit area over here. Once this loads up here, I can come up here, you can rotate images, you can flip things. Cropping would be the most important one, I think, for a lot of folks. So we can go ahead and I can crop in this image. And then once I'm happy with this, I can hit the crop button again. I can save it over here. There's a lot of other tools over here where you can specify certain widths and dimensions that you want to use. You can look at locking yourself into aspect ratios. There's some options here if you only want to modify just the thumbnail, or modify all the images except for the thumbnail. So I'm going to go ahead and drop this one onto my page, and now you can see the cropped version is now what showed up. One of the nice things about this is this does not replace your original image. This creates a duplicate image with the new cropped version, and you can always go and revert back to what your original image is at any point. We can add a caption to images quite easily. So let's grab some content here, and we'll drop in a nice caption in here. And then we can link up some images, and then you get some alignment stuff over here. So you can either choose your size that you want. You can go for medium, you can go for your thumbnail, you can go for your large image. If you wanted to start using some of the percentages here on the sizes, we'll see a little bug here on the captions, so we'll ignore that for now. But you do get some more control on how you work with your images. So you can start keying in your own specific sizes, and you can play with that and get a nice visual that you are happy with, as opposed to being restricted to two or three options that WordPress typically provides. So there's a significant change and improvement over the images, and I think that's going to be really great for those that write bigger blog posts or nice news stories that have a lot of great images. Another way you can add blocks too is you don't just have to come over to here. As you can see here, it says type / to choose a block. So if I want to come in and choose the /, you'll see there's a preset list. I think what this does is it gives you the most recent blocks that you have used. So you can see these are the most recent blocks that I have been testing and building with. Or if I know that I'm going to add a button block, I can just go ahead and start typing, and it searches by keywords. So I'm going to add a button block to the page. So if I add one button, and I can just hit enter, and I can immediately go to the next line and start adding more and more buttons. Now, also with buttons, we've got some of our colors that are coming from the approved style guide from DUC. You can see we have a light gray, we have a dark gray, and we have our university red. So one other thing that we can do is we change to the proper name of this, and I can actually start moving my buttons around into different orders. There are some percentages over here. So if you wanted to say, this is my 25%, I want this to be 50%, and I want this to be 25% to fill your space, you do have that flexibility here. We can also go ahead and make these buttons stacked if you don't want them to be aligned. If you have a button that's got a lot of text on it, we've always had issues with this stuff not looking so great. So there's a way we can, you can justify them center. Sorry, you got this one right here. So you can align them to the top, you can align them to the bottom, or we can stretch to fill. That's a little bug, so we'll fix that. So we got a lot of flexibility on how people are going to work with their buttons.
Troy, if I can just add something here.
Sure.
As you can all see, it can be really easy to make your site look bad by not aligning or putting too much text in one button or whatnot. So we do often try to restrict what can be done within a level of flexibility. So with something like this, even though we are providing a lot of flexibility, we will also provide a lot of guidance, some standards, things like that to follow, just so that we're not putting ourselves in a situation where it will look bad from a design perspective and not be usable for the end user. So keep in mind that, like, even though you can do some of these things, it might not be in the best interest of your site to be able to. And if we do notice that it's starting to get out of hand in some ways, like, we might look to restrict things even more, if that makes sense.
Great, and kind of piggybacking off of that statement, you might have noticed that I can't actually update my page right now. And that kind of might catch people a bit off guard. So I did want to touch on this really briefly. You just saw that I was building out these buttons, and I'm doing it really quickly here, and I didn't even realize that I forgot to link up these buttons. So that's obviously an accessibility issue. So in this case, I'm just going to put some incorrect URLs in here just temporarily. But what you can see is the update button is back in focus now. So you can see here, we do have a lot of things happening behind the scenes that's checking for accessibility issues in the content. And when we do have an accessibility issue, so if I were to break that button, you can see here that we're giving you a heads up when there's an accessibility issue, and we're telling you what needs to get fixed in order to meet those accessibility requirements and then be able to publish the page again. So if I remove this button, we can see I can go ahead and I can save my page now because I've met all accessibility requirements. So this happens on a few of our blocks. Okay, so let's just go into, I know this is one that has been asked for quite a bit by a lot of our users. So we do now have a method to embed Kaltura blocks. So I'm going to go and grab a URL here to a Kaltura video. I don't know if Matt is here in the meeting, but thank you for the information on helping with this block, Matt. We can put in a title. This should be a properly written title. I think this video is actually about bright space. And then I'm going to drop the Kaltura video in here, and you can see right away, it just immediately renders into your page. It'll be playable. It'll be the same thing on the front end. This works pretty much the way you would expect from a YouTube video or a Vimeo video, the tools that you've been using for years with WordPress. One of the other things that we've added here as well is the ability for our embeds to break out of the max width of 1024 and go to the full 1280, just to really give that video a good amount of space and presence on the page. So I'm going to go ahead and just refresh the front end really quickly, and we can take a quick look around here. So we go down, you see some images, you see some buttons. This video will render any second here now. Is it updated? Might not have been updated in the back end. Oh, that's a bug that worked this morning. Works here, that's a weird one. Okay, so moving on, we also just completed some work assisting the Department of Economics with a joint venture with the Bank of Canada, and they required the ability to embed Power BI items into a page. So we brought that functionality to cuTheme as well. So I can go ahead and add a Power BI block on the page, and you get the same options as you do with the Kaltura embed. You can give it a title here, and you drop in your Power BI URL, and you can start to see that the Power BI item is starting to render on the page. We do have the display in large width, which I forgot to make note of that wasn't functioning at the moment. So we do have a Power BI item now, and we have gotten some other requests for embed blocks that we're going to be looking at in the near future as well. So we're looking to expand on what we're going to do in that space. The next block I want to quickly look at is the description block, the description list. So this is our solution to what the slide means and FAQs would be, but with several different options. So in this case, you put in a term, and then we can just put in our description here, and you can have multiple paragraphs. You can do a list in here if you want. So you can really just build out your content like this. And then if I put in a second item, I'm not sure why that just jumped down there. Okay, we come into here and we can put in more content. In this case, we also have headers that go along with our blocks. We can do this. One of the other things that you'll see here is that you get different ways you can do some layouts. So going from your 2-column to your 1-column, and then we will eventually add an accordion option here for those users that want to do slide views the way that they've always done. And then from there, we can go ahead and take a look at the stat cards. So the stat cards, we talked about just being able to put in a description. So we'll put in some description. We can put in our statistics. I'm just going to quickly fill out the 3 of these. I want to wrap up in about 10 minutes. We have lots of time for questions. So we're going to put this stuff in. You can see here, we can go up into a 4-column. So if I wanted to add a 4th item, I can do that rather easily. You can add several items if you want, or you can come in and we can delete this single item. And if we select the block, we can come down to 3 columns. We can come into 2 columns. You can flip the content up and down. So if you want to do a different orientation, you're not limited. And then we also have another heading on this block as well. And last but not least, as far as what we're going to do on adding our blocks, will be our new hero banner. This page element here, this is our page banner. This is our hero banner for our pages. But what we did here is we also felt that it would be a useful block to have in the content area itself. So we can go ahead and add a hero content element. And then I'll just grab some of this content. We can drop this in, and you can leave it at that if you want. That could be a lead into a new section if you want. Fix a typo here. We can also go ahead and add some buttons. So you can add a couple of buttons in there if you'd like. And there's also the ability to add an image. And everybody loves Joey. Let's throw Joey in here. And you'll see as we start to add an image here, you can start to use these focal point elements or this focal point functionality to choose how your image is going to be displayed. And then Ishdeep had gone through and added several new features as well. So now we do have the ability to stretch this out beyond the max width. We can show the mobile image. For the most part, mobile images don't always look so great in mobile. So it's something that we definitely wanted to give people the flexibility to show or hide it if they wanted to. We can actually put the image on the left, which I actually really like this orientation a little bit nicer. I already talked about the buttons. So this is our hero banner. So we do want to start building out a series of various hero banners, and this could be used for various things like featured content. It could be section lead-ins, but we do want to start building out more of these hero blocks for various purposes as time goes on once we start rolling into the migrations. So that is a quick overview of some of the custom blocks that we've done and how you work with those, as well as some of the core blocks. I do want to take a quick look. I pre-built some of these things just to make it a little bit quicker towards the end of this demo. I'm going to hop in here now and show you how you would work with some of like the news listings. So you'll see that a lot of these options are going to be very consistent across a lot of our listing blocks. So we can put a header in here. I can change to a 4-column grid and it breaks out of the max width. You can bring it down to 2 columns. You can start to show some images. That takes a second just to refresh there. You can hide your dates. You can hide excerpts. You just have a lot of control. But I think the nicest part about this is you get the visual representation without saving your page. So you can get in there, you can really tailor your content the way you want it to look without having to publish anything. So you can see the same options here for the listing block. You get your 2 columns. You can do some ordering here. You can filter by categories. We can change the number of items. The 2 new items that are coming soon that are being worked on right now are the ability to add pagination and filtering. So that will be coming. Again, you see the same thing with the events. So if I select an events, you'll see we get a header, the columns. We can filter the categories. And you get the same options down here as well with the listing block. And then again, with the people, you get all the same options. Just this time you get the ability to show job titles, hide emails, show and hide phone numbers and stuff like that. So I'm going to kind of clean up some of this stuff a little bit. I'm going to put in the Golden Girls. Who doesn't love the Golden Girls? Oh, I thought I found a bug, but I didn't. Here we go. The Golden Girls are on page. I want this to be a nice 4-column layout, and I'm going to say, and there we go. So that is our demo of cuTheme. I definitely now want to leave the rest of the time open for questions. I got a feeling that we might have quite a few questions. I haven't been able to keep my eye on the chat, but I'm sure I'm going to go through and reply to as many of those as I can as well. So I definitely want to open the floor up to anybody that has any questions, anything that you'd like to take a second look at, anything you'd want more clarification on, anything.
So Troy,
25 minutes.
We answered a lot of the questions in the chat between Charlotte and Mike and myself,
Great.
but there was a question about the Instagram block.
Right, and it's actually oddly enough, we did have a discussion about that, and we do have a planned meeting coming up pretty soon, from what I understand, to discuss that. The question with Instagram is that Facebook or Meta or whatever they call themselves these days, X, oh wait, that's Twitter, you know, they change the algorithms all the time. They change the embed codes. Like they don't want people to embed their Instagram stuff. So, you know, there's always the question mark. There are ways to do it. It will run the risk of that potentially breaking on sites if Facebook, Meta decide to change how they do their embeds and their API. So I guess what that comes down to is really our team sitting back to weigh out the pros and the cons, the risk and the rewards, and, you know, making a decision on whether or not it's something that we do want to take the risk on.
Okay, and the other question, there was a question around modal for videos. If you could just show the video embed one more time.
Oh, sure. I don't actually have any videos in here, but let's just build one. Just give me 1 second. So there won't be an actual modal. Modals are typically not very mobile friendly. And oh, it's always funny when you open YouTube up when you're not signed in to see what you get. So this is gonna be a fun one. That's a pretty relevant topic. So let's just go here and let's just add a video here. This was the first video that showed up on page for me. So again, we do have to do a bit of work to make sure this spans in the editor. We need to make sure it spans the full width. But if I go ahead and I publish this, and we can take a view at the front page, you can see the Barbie video is fully embedded on the page. It is here, it's visible. If I were to throw a card block on the page, instead of popping the video out in a card block, here, just let me quickly build a card block. It might be a bit slower because it's not cached for me at the moment. We can move on to another question too that we can have a discussion around while I'm building out this card block, and I can show you what that functionality is going to look like.
Mike had a question earlier about rounded corners with respect to editing images that I didn't answer. Typically with our templates though, like the image rounding that you see is applied by styles, not by editing the actual images. But I don't know if that's something that we have toggle on and off or an option, Troy. So I just wanted to get clarification on that.
No, that was actually something that didn't come up within our group. We started off with the images from using rounded corners, and that was something that came from the introduction to Tailwind CSS into our development environment. But definitely something that we can have a discussion over the style that we would like to proceed with as far as the rounded corners go. For me, the rounded corners was a nice choice because we do, like, cards have rounded corners, the stacked listing has nice rounded corners. We're just trying to keep some of those elements consistent.
But you don't have to worry about, I mean, to be clear, you don't have to worry about rounding the images corners yourself. That's just handled by the browser and the styles.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just quickly here, I just quickly threw like a card listing on the video page, which is something you probably should never do because it's weird. But when you do have a card listing here, the nice thing is that instead of popping this open in a modal, you can play it right here, and then you can go right into, ow, that really hurt my ears because that's loud. You can pop this out into its own full screen, or you can pop it out this way as well. So we're just kind of falling back on some of the native YouTube functionality here and letting people play them in here while still avoiding, the issues that we have heard for people from using videos in a modal on a phone.
And you had a question about slideshows. Are you talking about image, like with image galleries? Just to get clarification.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So we just had a meeting yesterday or the day before. Adam presented the different possibilities for image galleries. So we haven't yet developed that. We're still looking at what our options are. So we will have that to show in a future demo.
Thanks.
Yeah, we do recognize the need to have galleries. So we're just trying to make sure that whichever direction we go is going to be really easy for our users, as well as provide something that is really nice and looks great on the front end as well.
Okay, thanks.
And I just want to reiterate a comment that Greg had put in the chat regarding our pre-publishing check. So this is the part that Troy showed that can check the code to make sure that it's accessible. And if it's not, then you'll get the warning that you can't publish. So these are called pre-publishing checks, and we create them ourselves. So we can decide what rules we put in place, what checks are done that prevent publishing. And so we are really focused on accessibility right now and looking at some of the key common accessibility errors that people are making, but we can't touch on all of them. So again, to reiterate what Greg said, it is on the onus of the content creator to understand different accessibility rules and make sure that you are creating content that is accessible, because it's not going to check for all accessibility errors. So yeah, just wanted to reiterate that.
And in some cases,
the template is accessible, and the colors are accessible, and sometimes there may or not be an option there for you guys because it's not accessible. One thing I was going to bring up was the stat cards, because that's a really good example. We had a lot of discussions about being able to change the color on the stat card, but it's actually an accessibility error to attribute meaning to a color, if that makes sense to you. So to like group things by a color is an accessibility error. So the option to change the color isn't provided to you. We try to say, oh, you can't put H1s on your page because there's only allowed to be one. There's certain things that we can do, and we control as much as we can, but we can't do everything. But I don't want to make it seem like all accessibility is on everybody or anything like that. Like, we do everything that we can to make sure that it is.
Right. And another one of the things with WordPress, anybody who's used WordPress outside of our Carleton environment will know sometimes they're very heavy-handed on how they force you into certain options, even though they don't make any sense in the real world, in my opinion. Like, I find it really odd that in some cases they allow you to break accessibility. Tables are a prime example. Tables are required to have a header to be accessible. In this case, we could not figure out how to just remove this option and force a header. So what we've done here is to help people not break that accessibility rule, and it's quite easy to do so, is that we do have a check here that says, your tables do have to have a header section, and then through documentation and tutorials and videos and training, we'll make sure that people are equipped with the knowledge and the skills to be able to recognize what those problems are and be able to fix them quite easily on the fly. The header is also another one. Sorry, MK.
That's okay. I was trying to add, often people will use a table as a content layout, and that's not what a table is meant for. And that's why you need to have the header in order to use the table appropriately. And that's why we're offering different content layouts that can get around the use of a table, not just for accessibility, but for overall usability as well.
Right. So the other one I wanted to point out, and this is the one that kind of bothers me the most, is that your H1 should be your page title. You should not be able to use an H1 throughout your content. In this case, WordPress just lets you do it. And I know several of us from the dev side have tried to remove it, and we have just not been able to do so. So what we did instead was we did make sure that we're preventing people from accidentally publishing a page with an H1. So we give you the warning. We can go ahead and change this down to an H2, and then you can update your page right here. It just grays out because it's switching to draft or saving the draft. But now I can go ahead and update my page, and you'll see that there are no page errors here. So we're doing a little bit of accessibility checking there around the ways that WordPress don't let us customize things the way we would actually like to. Not to say that they won't in the future. There has been several blocks that have changed for the better in even the last 3 months. So these are things that I'm hoping to see will change for the better moving forward with Gutenberg. Gutenberg is still rather new. It's only been about 2.5, 3 years in the making, and it's only been good for about a year. The 2 years before that, there was a lot of pain, a lot of changes that were happening as they were trying to figure out how they were going to build Gutenberg. So we're kind of coming in at a really good time right now.
And you have a question? I think I saw your hand go up.
Yeah, sorry. This is really hard for me to write into the chat. I'm not sure if anybody else is in a similar situation, but it's a question about tables. So on our site, we have dating back, unfortunately, all the way to 2006, which I'm trying to convince my manager to get rid of some of this data. But we have tables for each semester of a listing of course outlines. So the content in the table is a list of the course title, the instructor and stuff. And then each course title links to a PDF document. And I guess what I'm wondering is, can I do that? And would I have to migrate? Like, how would that migrate? I mean, would those links still be that are in the media folder? Would they still be relevant, or would you have to actually build them each individually? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean. Right now, I can't say for sure if all of the content is going to carry over perfectly on migration. I know we have one of our developers now who has been doing a lot of work on investigating the best options we have for migration. We're trying to maintain as much as we can. That's been a goal. So we are going to do our best there. In the case that you have a lot of those tables, it would be fantastic if you could convince the people above you to drop a lot of that content. I mean, I would love to see the numbers on who is actually going to go and look at a course from how far did you say? 2006?
2006.
Holy smokes! Like, aren't the kids that graduated in 2006 like close to retirement or something? Like, that's really old content at this point. I would love to see the numbers on that to be able to justify maintaining that. But in the case that your hands are tied and you're forced to do that, we have a lot of great people on our team that are more than happy to figure that out with you and support you and help you figure out what we need to do to get that content over without causing you too much grief.
Okay, thanks. Great, thank you.
If you guys, I posted in the chat, but if you could post a link or send one of us a link, like just with an example of that content, it would be, because we could use one of those pages as a test in our migration just to see what happens. But if you could just get a URL to one of us to give us an example, that would be great. Sure. Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to put it in the chat?
You can, if you don't mind. Then it's recorded in all of time and history.
And you can find it later and send it to any one of us. That's fine too.
Okay.
Yeah. This retirement comment. Feeling old. Are there any other questions? We're coming up on 10 minutes. I would like to wrap it up with a little bit more about next steps. But I think, let's just see. And you have an old hand, right? That's not new. Okay. Well, I will just say the questions don't have to end here. This chat is always available to us. So if you have any questions that you would like the whole group to see, you're welcome to use the chat after this meeting is done, or feel free to reach out to any one of us on the web team with any questions that you have. I will say, so what you're looking at here is on a development server right now. And so we will be distributing the link, and we would love for anybody who is interested in doing any testing, any just poking around and seeing that it meets your requirements, would love to have you go in and have a play around with it, look at the front end, have a look at the back end, and we would love your feedback and suggestions for improvement. So we have a few more tweaks that we need to do. And I just want to preface this also by saying this is a development environment. So you will most likely come across some bugs. We would love for you to report those as well. In the next couple of weeks, everyone on our team is going to be doing a very thorough review of this theme and capturing any bugs and enhancements that we can find. But the more eyeballs on it, the better. So send us your feedback, please, once we distribute this link.
There's a small bug in the login, MK, that me and Troy found just before the meeting. So for now, front end only. But at the very worst, it's a bug with our plugin and not a bug with our with the code. So we could just revert to a username and password that everybody has or something, or a couple usernames and passwords for everyone to log in if we don't fix the bug in time for testing. But currently, just the front end for testing.
Okay, which is a good place to start anyways, because that's what the end users will see, and getting feedback on the user's experience is really important. Okay, so yeah, that was SEO Theme, and as far as next steps go, so like I said, this is in a development environment right now. We are going to be doing a ton of testing and pretty much getting it ready for a fall launch. Before we launch, we are going to have another meeting like this where we will dig into migration, training, all of that good stuff. So I'm not going to talk about it too much now because it is a pretty big topic and we want to devote an entire section entire hour to it. But at the next one, we will talk about a migration schedule. We'll talk about the resources needed for migration. But I will say, because I know a lot of you are thinking about resources already, we are going to try our best to do as much as we can with the script. There will still most likely be some manual migration required, but once we have an idea of what that looks like, we can communicate it clearly, and we will be doing as much of the heavy lifting as we possibly can. But we'll talk so much more about that next time. We'll also talk a lot more about the training and workshops that we'll be providing, and just give you as much information as you need in order to get into cuTheme. But we're getting close. So thankful to Troy for showing us this demo today. And I also just want to give a shout out to, I don't know if he's here or not, but just a shout out to Taylor Smith and his team in OVPSE. They've given a lot of feedback on the theme as well. So a lot of the student services sites within the Office of Vice President of Students Enrollment, we're doing a lot of collaboration with that group. So we'll have a lot of consistencies across the board. Taylor has contributed a lot to the top nav, which I know we didn't talk about too much today. There's still some work being done on the top nav, so we will be able to show more of that in the future. And also I want to give a shout out to Tracy White and DUC and all of their help with branding and the ongoing conversations that we're having to integrate Carleton branding to the theme. And I think I saw Tracy's hand go up. Was that an accident, Tracy? Think so. Okay.
It was, yes.
Okay, thought so. All right. I think that was, yeah, I think that's it. We're 6 minutes early, so that's great. But like I said, if you have any other questions or comments, please reach out, and we'll send you all the link to have a more in-depth view, and send us your feedback, please. All right. Thank you, Troy. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Nice to see you all.